50 miles outside Richmond, along a rural stretch of 522, in the tranquil setting of Orchid, under a massive oak surrounded by weeds, you'll find one of the most obscure landmarks in all of Virginia.
He was buried there right at the house where we were living.
The final resting place of Walter Laganza.
He is there all by himself in solitary splendor.
A peaceful spot.
Yeah, I think people drive by it every day and would never notice.
Sharply at odds with the man 6 feet under.
He was a monster, that he just killed people out of the sheer enjoyment of killing people.
But how did this criminal's violent, blood-splattered road end in Gene Perkins's front yard?
Look at his expression. There's no feeling in this face. None whatsoever. None.
It's a frightening tale of a genuine American gangster. In Depression-era America, notorious bootleggers and murderers like Machine Gun Kelly, John Dillinger, and Al Capone were running roughshod over police departments. They shared disdain for the law and lacked respect for life. In the 1930s, unsuspecting Richmonders watched from afar, celebrating the grand opening of the State Theater on Broad or rowing championships on the James.
I think there's a really strong sense that it can't happen here.
Safely isolated from the bullet-riddled streets of Chicago, New York, and St. Louis, Richmonders needn't concern themselves with big city crime. But like a wrecking ball, the Tri-State Gang destroys the city's sense of security in 1933.
I think Richmond just wasn't ready.
Walter Laganza and his partner in crime, Bobby Mays, two street thugs from Philly with long rap sheets and a penchant for hijacking, take aim at Central Virginia.
It was a brief, lightning-like strike against Richmond.
In the latter part of 1933...
Their target, tobacco trucks from North Carolina loaded down with cigarettes. Club Forest, a speakeasy offering late-night dancing and gambling, proves to be the perfect headquarters for Laganza and the gang.
It was a real center of vice, surprisingly, in the woods of Goochland County.
The Tri-State's exploits soon turned deadly. Madeline Welton, the girlfriend of one of the members, is eliminated.
If you were a witness, if you knew too much, if they thought you knew anything, done.
The crime whips the public into a frenzy. Historian James Richmond's fascination with the Tri-State Gang stretches back to his childhood.
It was Prohibition. These people were pushed to the brink. They had nothing. They wanted everything. And it was a big, explosive period of time.
Weeks after Welton's killing, the Tri-State Gang's murderous reputation grows worse. On March 8, 1934, in a bold robbery outside Broad Street Station, Laganza and his cohorts, looking for a big score, hijack a Federal Reserve truck.
Walked over to it, jerked the back doors open, and Laganza immediately raised a pistol and fired a bullet into the brain of the driver of the truck.
Laganza stood there and laughed. The guy was bleeding to death, and he stood there and laughed.
So I think that Laganza would probably today be termed a sociopath.
Inside the truck, no cash, just canceled checks and letters. The crime leaves the city reeling as police hunt for suspects.
It was a huge sensation for a place like Richmond.
The Tri-State Gang escapes the long arm of the law.
And all of a sudden, here's big-time crime, on the city streets, and you couldn't go out. If you went out, you may be shot in a robbery. I think people panicked.
They had had bad people before, murderers, bootleggers, but never any professional gangsters on this kind of scale of criminality or viciousness.
Months later, a police dragnet snares Mays and Laganza in Baltimore. The cuffed criminals return to face a Richmond judge, the killers slapped with a death sentence. But Selden Richardson, author of The Tri-State Gang in Richmond, says the lockup is no match for these professional criminals.
The Richmond jail had very lax security. It seemed almost a gentleman's agreement that people would stay in the building.
Using 2 smuggled pistols, the convicts blast their way out.
And in this small anteroom is where this desperate gun battle took place.
The kids is making a break. Shut up, you bloodhead. I'll kill you as soon as I look at you.
Officer William Toot was the only thing standing between the convicts and freedom.
Toot fell in the doorway. Mays and Lagenza jumped over him, ran down the steps, down Marshall Street, and up Jail Alley to Broad Street.
Richmond police officer and father of 3 William Toot dies in a hail of bullets. A second officer would die later.
Nothing got in their way. They were bloodthirsty and they really had nothing to lose.
Mays and Lagenza, facing death, disappear yet again.
Nameless, unreasoning, unjustified terror.
News of the tri-state gang's rampage reaches FDR's White House. 4 months later, in January of 1935, Mays and Lagenza's luck runs out in New York City. The pair is finally arrested. The battered criminals return to Virginia under the cover of darkness and airtight security.
They're absolutely determined to make sure that there'd be no more trouble from these 2 Philadelphians.
Mays and Lagenza spend their remaining time just steps from the death chamber in the infamous State Pen on Belvedere. On the frigid morning of February 2nd, 1935, the 40-year-old Lagenza and 29-year-old Mays die minutes apart, thus ending one of Richmond's most tumultuous periods.
They did all of their damage in a very short period of time.
The Untouchables.
Long after their deaths, Hollywood would retell Lagenza and Mays' gripping story.
Tonight's episode, the Tri-State Gang.
Hey, Lagenza!
The gang's deadly crime wave that washed over Richmond even sprang to life in comics. These days, a few landmarks tied to the gang still stand.
It's true, it is a frozen moment in time here.
In the woods of Goochland, you will find remnants of Club Forest. Tri-State Gang's headquarters was blown up by gangsters in August of 1934.
The girlfriends, the gang members, the planning, all of that happened right here.
But the most curious landmark
All of my life I heard what a mean, mean man he was.
can still be found in Gene Perkins's old front yard.
I don't think the churches would have wanted him.
Gene's father, an undertaker in Louisa, agreed to bury the killer in the country when Lagenza's family wouldn't claim him.
The eyes are just, they're horrible. You can look at him and tell what he is.
For years, the Lacey's wondered if Lagenza's henchmen would drop in unannounced.
Flowers were left on that grave in the middle of the night. We never saw, heard anything at all. And it really was creepy.
Today, nearly 80 years after Walter Lagenza's crime spree,
We don't need him anywhere around breathing.
Gene says fittingly, poison ivy now envelops the grave of the notorious leader of the Tri-State Gang.
I'd much rather have him out there dead than I had out there alive. I'm glad he's where he is. He's where he belongs.